loft, I don't have a lot of drawer space in my kitchen, so I wanted to install where I found where I could put it was underneath in the toe kick area. So I have to work on clearing it out, trying to open up to find that open space. So if you're working on here, you'll be getting most of the tools that you have to try to get stuff off. When I finally got that out, I had pin nails that were stuck in there. I had to find some tools to get this out. So overall, it was a lot more work than I expected. Able to finally pull it off. Finally got upset, started cutting it just to pull it out. And then once I was able to get this off, then realized that there's more wood in there. Hopefully yours wouldn't be as difficult. So finally, after a lot of work, got it out, only to find that there was, rat droppings all in there. So I had to move on to the vacuum. So a couple hours later, I could finally actually start the project. And so I started off measuring, because what I wanted to do, I could see it's really hard to actually go in there and, mount the drawer. So what I'm going to do is make an enclosure, put the enclosure, or the drawer is actually in that enclosure, and install the whole enclosure inside of that. I found it to be easier, and then, screw that to the inside. If your hand looks like this, then you know you did it right. So this is why I didn't want to install it directly inside. So I need to start off working on the actual enclosure. So start off with a test piece, make sure I got the right thickness or height I measured, and then moved on to my plywood. I just happen to have some furniture grade around, so that's what I use. So I'm cutting it to the height that I want, which is a little bit smaller than the enclosure. Actually gonna be tight. I'm not gonna make it full around, so I use like this extra plywood that came off of there. I was just 3/16 inch, and that's going to be mounted to the back. Once I get it all done, you'll be able to see. So this is, again, I want it open at the top but with some structural integrity, and then the bottom is going to be full. Again, I had some other 3/16 inch MDF sitting around, so this is going to be the bottom of it. So I cut that to the width that I wanted, which is pretty wide, so 28/5/8. You're going to see a lot of thumbs up, but I'm pretty happy with myself here. So I had to do 20 inches wide, so this is going to be, or deep. And then this is the back, I believe. Oh, sorry, this is the top. So again, you'll see this. So I have the 3/4 inch that I'm cutting is the sides, because I wanted that strong to be able to put the rails. Again, make sure your tools are square. I wanted the rails to be able to have thickness, the correct thickness, and also to be able to mount directly on the inside. So I was using the Festool track saw here, along with the multifunction table acting as the radial arm saw. Pro tip, actually hold on to your wood, so when you try to cut it, it doesn't just slide. It works a lot better. So let me try this second time. Hey, it works much better cutting this time. All right, so you can see I've actually got it flipped upside down. So I'm just going to glue that MDF to the 3/4 inch. Again, this is the structure that I'm putting inside of there, and then I'm going to mount the rails and everything too. So I just glued it and tacked it in place, because it just needs to be semi-structurally strong, just enough to hold a squareness why I mounted in. So again, this is the bottom. So glue this side, tack it. So now you're starting to see. So this is some of the pieces I cut. This is the entrance part. So I'm just, again, holding it so it's square, and then I'm going to put a piece on the back here so that it's structurally strong. Make sure it's all square, parallel. Tack that in place. Now you can see here's the enclosure, but it's a lot easier. Going to be a lot easier to mount the drawer inside of this, and it slides everything versus trying to work in this 4-inch. So you can see here I'm just testing the fit on it. So once I have the drawer and everything mounted in there, I'll be able to push it in. And it's pretty tight, so I have to wiggle it for a while, but that's pretty much what I wanted. So now I'm going to move on to the drawer. So again, I'm just going to use my 3/4 inch. And this I made a little bit smaller, just so I have some room on the bottom and the top, so the drawer can slide out and also doesn't get hit when it comes out. So it was just enough where I could make 2 passes on this, and one would be the front and one would be the side. So I'd have the 4 sides of my drawer. So I'm back to the track saw. Normally I would use a miter saw, so I didn't have to keep measuring, make sure it's square, but I was semi-lazy, and I had the MFT table out here. So I'm going to cut the drawer. Again, this is the width and the blade stops. So you can see this is totally enjoyable project. So I tried again, and the bright light stops. Then I decided to check the batteries. Luckily, in this track saw, it has 2 batteries, but you only need 1. But happened to be the bottom battery that was out, which is you have to have at least a bottom battery in there. Tried again. All right, line it up. Works much better this time. It works a little bit slower on 1 battery, but it's enough. So I'm pretty proud of myself. Hey, look, I can cut 2 boards the same length. Not sure why that's that interesting. Hey, I can get 2 more boards the same length. Look, Mom. Yep. So here I'm just testing it out, and I obviously miscalculated because there should be room for rails on the side. I cut the exact width instead of accounting for the rails. Yep, thumbs down this time. So this time I'm going to just account for the rails and just cut off, I think it was 1 inch. And then some creative editing, you can see, hey, it works much better. So now when the drawer fits in there, the slides will actually be able to be mounted to the drawer to the side of the enclosure. Speed it up since you don't want to see me doing this. Yep. Oh, and I'm proud of myself. The second try was much better. So here it is, just test fitting the 4. It's going to be a lot of thumbs up, as I mentioned. So just a quick pass. Again, this is going to be mounted underneath. You're never going to see it unless when you're opening it. So just made a quick pass. And I'm going to have to dado out. I'm not sure why I'm showing you how to use a dado blade. Probably more interested in the drawers. But anyways, I'm going to, so I want it to be 3/8 of an inch because that's how deep, it's half of the 3/16, and I want it to be a 1/4 inch thick or up from the bottom. So you'll see. So I'll run this 1/4 inch thick dado. And again, I like to test it on wood to make sure my cut's correct. And so I'm going to dado every single one of these, my drawers, just double check. Yeah, I think that's what I expected. So this is where the 1/4 inch plywood will fit the bottom of the drawer. So again, there's plenty of videos out there on how to make drawers, so I just did a simple one here. So again, it was 3/8 inch thick, though halfway through the 3/4 inch plywood. And here's an example of all them cut, if you didn't understand what I meant. And then I'm going to cut out the plywood. It's kind of a mess, this plywood I had, but it was what I had around. It was fairly straight. Again, it's good enough for a drawer, so I'm going to cut it out to the width, and I'm going to dry fit it, make sure I did everything correctly before I glue it all up and get halfway through the gluing and realize that I miscut it like I did before. But it all seemed to work correctly. Maybe a thumbs up. Yep, turn it. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to dowel in place because that's strong enough. So I have this dowel jig, and I'm sure everybody's screaming at their video right now, like that's why that jig has the ability without this to do these pins, but I like it like this. I like it. It's simple to me. For this jig doesn't seem to work. It's difficult to work when you have small pieces like this. So anyways, push the pin in, gives me an indentation. I know where to drill. And then the stop on there, make sure you don't drill all the way through the wood. Just to prove that it actually works. There you go, lined up, nice and square. Edges good. The dado line up, so I know the drawer is going to be straight. And what I like to do is number each one of mine, because I've had the problem of mixing them up. And you can see I numbered another one. Numbered all 4 of them. That when I go to put them together, I don't have any accidents or drilling the dowels in the wrong way. So if you've used dowels before, which you probably have, easy, glue in the hole, glue all of the dowels, glue everywhere. Make sure, so when you squeeze it, I like to put the board in the bottom end as I'm putting them in versus trying to slide it in because it's pretty tight. It was exactly a 1/4 inch, so it's a little tough to, I wouldn't be able to slide it. So once you mount it, hopefully it's square. So measure the corners like you normally would. Mine was actually out of square a little bit. I used the square just to see which direction it was out. Give it a couple taps on it. Measured again. It's finally square this time. All right, so it's time to clamp it. And then, as usual, left it overnight to dry. And so once the next day, I'm about to put the rails on it. So I'm putting the rails. This is the side of the drawer. It's all dried. And I'm going to put the rails right in the middle. So again, I draw a center line here and just line it up. I like to put it flush at the front, just makes it easier for all the measurements. And then I like to use a clamp just to loosely hold it in place. So I got the front in place, line up the holes over the line, and then tighten it down. Then I can pre-drill. I like pre-drilling everything. It makes it a lot easier. And the clamp holds in place. So now I need a 1/4 inch reveal at the bottom, or a gap. So I just use these blocks, put the drawer inside of the enclosure that I'm filling, and then I can line up the rails that I put to the enclosure, just to see the distance, measure it, transfer that distance to the back, and then I have a straight line that I can transfer, so I can put the inner rails so that they'll line up with the rails that are on the drawer. And I like to put, since this is, you push it to open the drawer, I use a 3/8 inch gap just so there's enough to push, because if you put it flat, you wouldn't be able to push it. You wouldn't be able to compress the spring to make it open there. So just get it all lined up in there and screw it in place. And now I just want to test out. So I put both sides, make sure the rail is working on both sides. It's working in the enclosure. It goes in straight. So you can see once you push it in, it locks in place. So you have to press it and compress it to push out. So that's why it has to. You need that little bit of gap off the front. So test it a couple times. Make sure. Just use the setup block to make sure. And we get a thumbs up, of course. So here you can see it's mounted inside of there with the rails. I'm going to push. I want to mount it to the wall, or sorry, to the inside of the cabinet. And I actually noticed that it was moving a little bit. So I don't see here, but I put 2 screws in the back, well, one on each side, just so it didn't tilt back. So just double check it again. Make sure it's actually working. It shouldn't, as I screwed it in there, I didn't pull it out of square or anything. So it's still working here. So it looks good. So you can see there's enough clearance on the top and the bottom. It comes out, it doesn't hit the floor. That's why I didn't want to put it really square. And so this is what you do. Kick with your foot, pop out. This way you don't have to reach down, you don't need handles. We obviously go down there and you'd be putting things in and out, but it's easiest to work with your foot. And now I want to mount the face to it. I could have gone with hardwood, but I just had plywood. It's fine. It's sitting underneath the cabinet, so I just wanted it flush to the bottom so that I still can maintain that gap. You would never see that gap underneath, so that's why I'm keeping it flush to the bottom. Again, I like to use a loose clamp on here just to kind of hold it in place. And then I pre-measured how far of a reveal I want on the side or cover up. And so I lined that up that way on the left and the right. I already measured it. Then go it tight, make sure it's flush, measure it again. I don't know why I measured so many times. And then mount from the back of the drawer here to the face. So mount it. This way it's easy. The clamp's holding in place. Screw some screws in there. It's wide. It's like 28 inches. So I went and put another screw in the middle just because it was bowing a little bit. So pre-measure, again, make sure your drill bit can't go all the way through. I pushed it all the way down so I didn't have to, so it didn't accidentally go through the front plate. Screw it down. Just double check the clearance on it. Make sure it's not hitting the ground, not hitting the top. You can see it covers on the side, and I just, again, make sure as it comes out, just double checking the clearance on it. All looks good. Some more testing because it's fun to test. Oh, maybe, yep, another thumbs up. So I'm very excited with myself here. Might as well use that thumb. You can finish it however you want. I just use this polystane. Again, it's the stain and the polyurethane in one. Just coated it all and just used some really high sand grit. I think at like 400 or something, just to get rid of any of the grain rise on it. And then I got finishing wax. This is what I like to finish mine with. Just gives it a little extra sheen to it. Also gives it a little extra strength. So I use steel wool in the wax after the finish is done. Again, it's smooth. So I'm sanding it first here just to, like I said, high grit, just to get rid of that little bit of any peaks any wood grain rise, and then I used this finishing wax. So you basically just smear it on everywhere, not real thick, but just work it in, and then when it's done, buff it out. So here I did the other one. I did a small one on the side as well, so you can see it all lined up pretty good. Again, it's close enough match. Nobody's gonna be down on their hands and knees. So that one worked out. That was a large one. Same I did for the side. It all lined up pretty well, and it's all kicking out, bouncing as I expected. You see, you can get almost a full pull out on them. They lined up well. So overall, pretty happy with it. I got extra space here. It's actually 4 inches deep. It's a lot higher than it, or more than it looks. Oh, final thumbs up.